Despite our trials and tribulations...
T's and T's.
Titties.
Will you stop rubbing your nips?
They're hard.
Liar.
Now we are finally drinking our Brutes IPA. A successful one, nonetheless.
It is damn good. But let's first talk about what a Brute IPA is supposed to be, and then let's talk about all the things we picked up on.
A Brute IPA is supposed to be a champagne sort of style of IPA. The key characteristics here are it is going to be very dry, highly carbonated, and also still low IBU, and then crystal clear as well.
Yeah, and so it's lingering those hops towards the back end. They're going to have great flavor and aroma, but not a lot of upfront bitterness. That upfront bitterness would actually be really negative in a style that's this dry because there's not a lot of body to fall back on.
There's nothing there.
So let's talk about what we did on this one, and then we'll tell you what we tried to do to fudge our way around the system and did not work.
On this one, it was a 100% just pale two-row barley grain bill. No need to really get too complicated, especially since we're still trying to kind of experiment with this.
Mm-hmm.
And then regular, fairly low mash. And yeah, we got the amyloglucosidase, the AMG, in there, and that managed to bring our final gravity down to 1.001.
Nearly hit the 1 mark, but...
Nearly hit the
yeah,
1, not quite there. Probably just a few starches left over from not quite the right mash temp. AMG was a little bit on the older side and not super fresh.
Yeah, well, never know. But and there's always going to be some variation, just kind of depending on what happens, you know, mash to mash. But yeah, one thing to kind of circle back, you mentioned that we did a low mash temperature. Low mash temperature is actually pretty typical for what we do in a lot of our beers, just because we like to take that variable out of the equation. It's more consistent to mash at a lower temperature.
Yes.
And if you want to build body, you can throw in oats or wheat or...
Yeah, so anywhere between about 145 and 150 degrees is what we're kind of shooting for generally on our mashes.
Yep.
That's what we're meaning by low mash temp. You know, definitely nothing up there in the 155 or anything like that.
Yeah.
So otherwise, you know, like I said, basic grain bill. More so on the hops. This is actually 100% Mosaic hops. I really actually like the way that they are coming through. I think it's a great representation of this last year's crop of Mosaic. Mostly because I did a fairly small Whirlpool edition. I think I did 2 ounces of the regular pelletized hops at about 170 degree Whirlpool, somewhere in there. And then what I also did is I actually dry hopped in the keg using cryo hops right before we kegged the beer. So those are actually still in the keg. They've been in a mesh screen, steeping in the keg, giving that sort of dry hop impact. So I think that gives us a really nice balance between getting a little bit of that you know, vegetal bitterness from using the typical pellet hops in the Whirlpool, and then also the cleanness of the cryo hops as that dry hop.
And that's an important thing to know, is that if you use 100% cryo hops, what we've noticed is it does kind of come across too soft, too just the fruitiness in the beer. So we like to do at least a little bit of pelletized hops for just that classic plant matter flavor that you used to with most IPAs before cryo hops were a thing.
The chlorophyll flavor in IPAs is something that we've actually become very accustomed to. And while you can probably do a 100% cryo hop beer, in fact, I've had them. They do taste fine, but they almost taste like there's something missing. And you're like,
yeah, exactly.
You're like, this is a really good beer, but it feels like there's this flavor I'm not getting in there.
You're used to your palate being beaten up a little bit by the, I just call it plantiness, but by that aspect of what makes an IPA bitter.
Last thing, I believe we used, was it Imperial Flagship?
Yep.
To ferment this out. So regular old Chico strain, a nice healthy pitch to try to keep those esters down, you know, keep the fermentation as clean as possible for it. And I think that pretty much sums up how we actually were able to be successful with this one.
Yeah, and speaking of the Flagship, if you watched our video on the corporate strain that Imperial just came out with, Flagship is a yeast that we're going to be doing a side-by-side of in an upcoming video. We have that going in basically an Englishy kind of pale ale with the corporate strain and the Flagship strain. So stay tuned for that, because that's going to be good.
So now that we got one to work, what was our process that we kind of screwed up on now?
We tried to attack it from a couple different ways. So one of the things we tried to do is just go really, really heavy, high fermentable adjuncts, including corn sugar, incling corn and rice. Yeah. And the heavy rice, Bill, I think rice has a distinct flavor when you add it to beer at that level.
It does. It's got, I wouldn't say it's so much a flavor as it is a mouthfeel. It's this intense creamy smoothness that you get in the beer, which actually is nice in certain beer styles. For instance, a cream ale, right?
Yeah.
That works really well in that. However, it doesn't sort of embody that dryness that a brut has.
Yeah.
And we tried another batch where I believe we put in about 3 pounds of rice into our grain bill, as well as a really high amount of corn sugar. And while that ended up making an amazing beer that almost tasted like a pina colada, it was not a brut.
It wasn't the style. And the rice, it does dry the beer out, so you end up with a lower final gravity still, but it doesn't feel or taste dry. It's not a champagne-y beer.
Yeah. And then I think another thing that you tried was sort of doing the super attenuating yeast.
So we did a whole the other batch we did a high attenuating yeast, so we did a Belgian strain that can attack more sugars in general, and then we also tried mash side enzymes on that one. Now the one that we have right here, this is a fermentation side enzyme, so this is added to the fermenter. The mash side, I was kind of trying to see if it would make just as dry of a wort, and that was a complete fail. The beer was good.
The beer is delightful.
But it was nowhere near that final gravity that we were kind of hoping.
Exactly, yeah. That one finished at, 06 or something, which is still pretty dry for a beer, but not that sort of near 1 dryness that we would expect from the brutes.
Right.
And, one other thing to mention, too, is you said that you use that mash enzyme, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's actually a different place. It's going to be the most active at about 150 degrees.
It attacks a different part of the sugar chain, basically. So
using the high temperature mash enzyme generally will break down different types of sugar. Specifically, I believe they're 1,4 linkages is what it calls for, whereas the lower temperature enzyme, the AMG, the amyloglucosidase, will break things down at a lower temperature, but it also breaks down those 1,6 linkages, which are key to getting 100% or near 100% fermentability.
And a big thing that I think was part of why it failed is because that higher temperature enzyme, that's really doubling up on the enzymes that's already naturally present in the grains.
Yeah.
And so it's not adding anything to the process, it's just kind of adding more enzymes, the same kind that you already have. This one does a different enzyme.
It's got the enzymes.
It's got an enzymes.
Typically for a brut, the AMG will be added during fermentation. I actually did a little different approach because I did some research on it finally, and I realized that it's most active at about 120 degrees. So that's actually where I added this enzyme. So I managed to crash out the beer after I did my Whirlpool edition, brought that down to 120, and actually gave it 20 minutes rest at 120 before I continued to cool it. So my guess is that most of that conversion happened pretty fast at that 120 degree mark, and that's just another way you can kind of attack this instead of adding it to the fermentation.
But we may be wrong. If we are, prove it to us, and then we'll know. It's a new style to us, so
New style to a lot of people.
Exactly, which is why it's fun. We should probably taste this. I mean, we already tasted it.
You should probably taste it. Hang on.
Hey, do you guys want to know what this tastes like?
See if they can they see that? Can they see the light coming through there? I don't know. Very clear beer. That's an important factor.
Yeah, it's got to be clear.
Opposite of a New England.
Yes. I mean, the hopping is kind of similar to a New England because you're aiming for that softer back end hopping because it needs to be so dry. Pardon me, but the flavor is going to be way different.
And I think we did adjust our chlorides just a little bit on this, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, we didn't go high chloride like we do New England. We went more of a medium.
Yeah, so just a little bit probably more towards the chloride than the sulfate. So just a slightly soft profile, but not nearly as soft as what a New England might be. Okay.
Soft not in terms of water hardness, but soft in terms of
mouth feel, yes.
Palate tingliness.
Palate tingliness. Okay, tasting. On to it. All right, what are we doing here?
Oh, I'm going to adequately taste it. Hey, look, my glass is full. Cheers. Now I'm standing in the frame. All right, so while Logan's gone, let's go ahead and get this tasting done real quick and do the wrap up. Just kidding, guys. I'll wait for him. I'm nice.
First impressions on tasting. It does form a head. Not a very thick one because of the lack of proteins, right?
Yeah, the lack of high starches. I don't know. Has a head, and it stays a decent amount of time, even though it finishes so dry. I mean, there's still something there that's keeping it bodied.
smell is incredibly tropical, I would say.
You get some guava. I'm confusing like guava and peach. That's kind of where I'm getting that from. But definitely that tropical side on the smell. Yeah, it's pungent too. You can definitely tell that those dry hops are doing their job and really popping that up.
Guava. What's that kind of yellowy fruit?
A banana.
No, not banana.
A lemon.
No, like a tropical one that you get in salads. Mango.
Mango.
There you go. That's what I'm getting from it. Mango.
So that's orange. You're way off base.
What? All right. What's it taste like?
A starfruit. You're thinking of a starfruit. Those are yellow.
It could be anywhere in that range. That sort of really, really tropical, light, sweet fruitiness.
Light, sweet fruitiness. Anyways, going to the flavor. The flavor profile. The first thing you get is just the carbonic bite. It's a forward part of the flavor profile.
It is, yeah.
Yeah,
and that's even with, I will say, ours isn't even carbonated quite as much as I want it to be.
Yeah, I'd like to get it a little bit up too. I agree with you there.
But you get that same carbonic bite as, I hate to make the comparison, but something like Bud Light, when you get a can of Bud Light, and those are very, very highly carbonated beers, and that's because they have very low IBUs, and that carbonic bite helps to sort of create this perceived bitterness in there.
To balance out the, lack of everything else in there.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. So yeah, on the palate, you're still getting some of that. There's a little bit of like a proteiny dryness that's kind of lingering on my palate. I don't know if you get that, but there's not a lot. There's not a lot in terms of mouthfeel other than just kind of that bright pop. That's what I'm gonna call it.
No, it is very bright. It's that's the best way to describe this beer. It's just a bright beer. Very bright, it's very bright, it's very fizzy.
Yeah.
And then it's just all mosaic in there. It's really what it is. It's this year's crop of mosaic has been not so much on the herbal tea-like side as much as it is that sort of sweet tropical fruit side.
Last year's was definitely more on the cattiness, like what Citra was, what Simcoe was a long time ago. I don't know, lineages,
And you get a little bit of that other zesty sort of a character to it.
Yeah, I can see zesty.
Zesty, like almost basil-y, actually, I would say. If you were to kind of go herbal, I would say kind of like every so hint of like a basil.
I can see that. Yeah, like the mintier side of a basil, though, not like not like the throw it into your spaghetti basil.
Like lemon basils, actually. I'm growing lemon basil, so that's why I was like, actually, this is kind of reminiscent of that.
That's what it tastes like. Not a bad flavor to have.
Otherwise, what else is there to say?
Looks and tastes yellow, which is important.
Very deceptively strong in alcohol.
Yeah, that's an important part to mention. When you're dropping an extra 10 points in gravity from how dry this thing is, you gain an extra, I think every 10 points is 1.2-ish percent alcohol. So
this is actually an 8% beer that we are drinking, and you would not have any clue that it was that high because the body is so light on it.
And what's that going to be on just barely over 1060 starting gravity?
I think it was 1062, I think.
So if you want to really save money on the boozy aspect, then try this methodology. And actually for an IPA, it's not terribly, in terms of the amount of hops you're adding, there's not a ton to it. Yeah,
this actually, total amount of hops was 3 ounces in this beer. We did have the cryo hops, but, even without that, it'd be 4.
Yeah.
And they do come through because the beer is so light. That's what's so brilliant about it.
Yeah, the body's nothing, and so all the hops just pop through, and it's reminiscent of an IPA. We probably could go more. I think we played it a little cautious on this one, but I'm glad we did. It turned out sessionable and bright and fun, and
a little bit of slickness.
That's what I was thinking of. The proteininess is what I think.
Oh, is that what you're talking about? Yeah, just a little bit. And I don't know if maybe that was because I kind of a little crazy on my enzyme, but
yeah, I'm wondering if because I've gotten a little bit of that on the first edition where I did mash enzyme too. The same kind of that feel, and I don't know if there's something to the protein, to the enzyme itself that stays with the beer. That's gonna be my operating theory, I guess is what it is.
Operating theory. So probably a properly measured dose could alleviate that potential.
Being a little bit better.
Flavor in there.
Yeah, exactly. A little bit better about not just kind of enzyme. Because the 2 beers that we had enzyme to, I have that same kind of whatever it is on there.
Yeah, and for the most part, this enzyme is very powerful too.
Yeah.
Literally, I think we have been using a 4-ounce bottle, and that 4-ounce bottle will treat 125 gallons.
Yeah.
So yeah, you're talking, half a teaspoon, I think, for a 5-gallon batch or somewhere along those lines.
Small bits.
Yeah. Well, is that about it?
I think we're done. If you want to see more
only have
on
like
this,
4 glasses now, so.
I can use fine.
Ah.
If you want to see more on this, we might split this into 2 videos. I'm not really sure what we're going to do. We might use the footage we have and put it in this video. We'll find out. But if you definitely have questions, comment below. Ask us those questions. Like, subscribe. Ring the bell for notifications, because subscriptions don't really matter anymore to YouTube.
And enjoy the show.
Enjoy the show! And then just do that.
You should take a nap.
I should take a nap.
You should all take a nap. Yeah. Join us next time for Big Beer. Ow. Ow.
My knees.
Ow.
Ugh. We're old men. We're probably not even out of frame yet.
Oh, Jesus.
Oh, I did a squat.
Ow. It's like bent over.
Yeah, you did. Alright, that good? We good? All good in the head?
All good under the hood.